So with that, we're going to jump into advancing social change via media, and why it takes more than a good story, with Susan McPherson, Katherine Oliver, and Sammy Montran. Please come up. You want the podium? Yes. Yeah, do be careful.
On? Yes. All right, cool. When you're here, you can't hear. Hi, good morning.
Oh, it's so great to be here.
Yes.
It's not my first time
No.
here. In fact, I had an amazing experience at the UN with Sidney Pollack, Nicole Kidman, and Sean Penn. And that was back in 2004. And I was film commissioner for New York, and we facilitated the production of that film, The Interpreter. It was the first film that ever shot here. So it was a special experience, and especially to be here with Sidney Pollack.
Absolutely. And then you're obviously very comfortable. I have to say, there is no one who epitomizes how media can be a force for social good and innovation than the woman sitting next to me, Katherine Oliver. As she mentioned, Katherine was previously the New York City Mayor's Office, Commissioner of New York City's Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment from 2002 to 2013. And for anyone who lives or visited New York City during that time, we saw just an explosion of films and production that was happening in the city. And it's in large part to the woman sitting next to me, Katherine.
Thank you.
What led you to that position, or what led that position to being formed? And then tell us, if you could, a little bit about what you did in that role.
Well, I guess it was 9/11, and it was Mike Bloomberg. I spent most of my career working with Mike Bloomberg at his company. Started as a journalist, a business journalist, being on the air, radio and television, and then assumed a management position, and was charged with launching Bloomberg Media globally, and was living in London. 9/11 happened. I came back to New York to vote because my boss was running for mayor, and he won. And I never thought of working in government, but I thought he would have a very unique approach. And it was an interesting time. I really felt like I wanted to help my city. And the charge was really to rebuild New York and to diversify the city's economy and to make New York a very attractive place for people to live and do business. And so he appointed me as the film commissioner, the commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting.
Such an exciting title.
It's the oldest film commission in the world. It was actually set up in 1966 by Mayor John Lindsay, and it was part of economic development for the city. And the film and television business is really big business for New York. It employs a lot of people, but more than that, it's a great way to market and promote the city. And when you think of shows like Sex and the City, which was one of the few shows that was shooting in 2002 when we came into office, the branding and the world sees the city through the lens of that television show. And when you think about what that television show did for the Cosmopolitan and Jimmy Choo's shoes, every woman. And so people around the world would want to come to New York to experience the New York that the girls did in the television show. And fortunately now we have Girls, and look at what that show on HBO has done for Williamsburg and making Brooklyn really cool.
Which is where Katherine's originally from.
Right. So it was part of the charge post 9/11 was to rebuild the city, to diversify the city's economy, and we were faced with runaway production. A lot of films were being made in other parts of the world, the end of the 1990s and into 2000, in Canada and in other territories that offered very attractive tax credits. And there was the perception of the hassle factor of shooting in New York, and that New York didn't really want to help facilitate that business. And so we set out a course to bring the business back, and we did in a very big way. And when we started, we had Sex and the City and Law and Order. here, and I was dealing with the Rudy Giuliani movie that was being made in Montreal. It was USA Carlton Granada, and Martin Scorsese was making Gangs of New York at Cinecittà in Italy. And so I think it was the epitome of runaway production, and we worked hard to bring it back. And at the end of the administration, we were extremely successful. There are 130,000 New Yorkers that work in the film and television industry. Its economic impact of over $7 billion a year. And the crowning achievement was when Jimmy Fallon and NBC announced that they were moving The Tonight Show back to New York. So it was a great way to kind of end our tenure after 12 years. You know, The Tonight Show was born in New York. Carson moved it to Burbank in the 70s because he said there wasn't enough talent. And then, you know, Jimmy Fallon, Brooklyn-born, brings it back. And so I think it was a great way to kind of come full circle. And it's film and television is a thriving business in New York. And we set out on a course to use that strategically to really promote our messaging. At the company, at Bloomberg LP, we were developing radio and television to build the brand of Bloomberg. And so, you know, coming to city government, I applied those sensibilities of business strategy and marketing to build the image of New York. And, you know, every night that, you know, Letterman goes on the air and says from the greatest city in the world, New York, it was in our best interest to give him permits to do, you know, stupid pet tricks on 53rd Street and, you know, smash pumpkins on Broadway because it really sends a signal to the world that New York is open for business and it's a great place to do film and television production.
It's a lot of fun, too. I mean,
Absolutely.
let's just cut to the chase. Curious, could you talk a little bit about the Made in New York initiative?
Well, we created Made in New York because, as I said, when we started, we were losing a lot of film and television production to Canada and other parts of the world. And, you know, how could this happen? You know, and what were we going to do to bring it back? And, you know, again, it was 2002, and it was really appealing to creating a sense of community. And we knew that we couldn't do it on our own. We knew we needed to really draw on the community. So I wanted to create a logo to really celebrate the projects and the people who were making their films and television shows here. So Radical Media, which is a New York-based company, created the Made in New York logo. And we thought of it as like a good housekeeping seal. And we used it as an overarching branding campaign for everything that we were doing. And to our great surprise, it really struck a chord. And it helped really foster that sense of community. And it went viral. And it was really touching into a grassroots sensitivity that there was great pride. I remember when CSI New York called and said they wanted to use the logo because Law and Order was using it. But CSI New York was made in Burbank, and they came here 5 days a year. So we wouldn't allow the use of the mark. We really were very strict with it, and it created a buzz in the industry. But more than that, it created that sense of community. And as the maker movement started to take shape, then the technology sector grasped onto it. And in the third term of the Bloomberg administration, 2009, 2010, as we really sought to promote the tech sector in New York City, the startup community here was saying, hold on a minute, we're not only proud we're made in New York, but I remember Chad Dickerson saying at Etsy, we're proud that we're made in Brooklyn. And they're, you know, even more so in this community, they really embraced the logo and wanted to be a part of this movement. And so it was quite exciting, and I think that it just illustrates the power of branding and creating that sense of community and providing a very clear message.
Excellent. How do you think the film and television and media industry contribute to cities' broader economic development, globally, locally, nationally?
Well, when you see a television show or a film or, you know, even the Broadway community, it's not just the people that are employed by the show, you know, and there are a lot of them that are working behind the scenes, but it's also the ancillary businesses that they support. So we really looked at, you know, the florist in Flushing, Queens, or the dry cleaner in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. You know, they're impacted by film production, the restaurants, the hotels, and so we created an initiative where we went out to all of the businesses in the 5 boroughs of New York that would use would be used by the film industry, lumber yards, coffee shops, hotels, printing companies, and offered them a discount on their services if they were part of this program. And when films came into our office for permits, we issued them these, they could be a part of this program. So it was a great way to foster support and drive business from the film and television industry to these ancillary businesses. But it also creates this buzz. And, a younger generation, everyone can now make films on their phones. And they can tell stories in a nanosecond on their phones. And so it's teaching and inspiring children and young people to be expressive in different ways. And so we created a number of workforce training programs and educational initiatives that really put New Yorkers on track for a career in this thriving industry.
So admirable. As we saw with the Made in New York project program, communities galvanized around a sense of local pride, but also film and TV industry, also in the film and TV industry. Why do you think film and TV have such a unique ability? And more importantly, in the seat that you sit in now, what media projects do you view are really pushing the envelope in terms of innovation and social good?
Well, I think it comes down to storytelling, and I think that everyone enjoys a good story, and what does it take to tell a good story, and there are visuals, and there's a compelling message. I think we're very lucky in New York. The independent film community is rooted here. When you look at the media industry, I mean, we are so well positioned, and when we saw the technology sector taking off here, we thought New York has such a great advantage because we have Madison Avenue, we have the advertising community here, we have Wall Street, the financial community here, but we've got great storytellers, and we have news organizations that are based here. So we're in, it's the right mix of all the ingredients that you need to develop thriving media businesses and to connect people with stories and messaging. And so I think that it's very compelling to use media and technology to educate, inform, engage. We have participant here today, and they're going to be speaking later on at the conference, and it's amazing what Jeff Skoll has accomplished in the last 10 or 11 years with really focusing on storytelling and socially responsible messaging, not only in the documentary world, but in the feature world. HBO is here today, and Nancy Abrams, and my hero Sheila Nevins at HBO, and Jamie Redford is here, and he's a great storyteller in the environmental film world. I see Elisa Reiner, who you know her from Orange is the New Black, which is a popular TV show that is made in New York, and she's also a filmmaker, and we actually connected with her and her production company recently. They're working on a new film, a feature film called Equity, I guess I can say it, let it out of the bag, and it's about women on Wall Street. It's about women on Wall Street. The film's going to be made all by women, showcasing women's role in Wall Street today and looking at the tech sector and gender issues and gender inequality. So I think that there are great talent in New York, and where I sit now at Bloomberg, we're looking at different ways in which we can use media and technology to influence change and to educate. Bloomberg Philanthropies is focusing on a lot of global causes that is focusing on the public health arena or on government innovation or education and the environment. And I think that in keeping with the Bloomberg philosophy of using media and technology to provide better services, inform more effectively, but also to scale, in a very creative way is something that we take to heart.
Can you talk a bit more about your specific role going forward?
So the Bloomberg administration ended in 2013, and Mike Bloomberg started a new business called Bloomberg Associates, which is part of Bloomberg Philanthropies. And Bloomberg Associates, I'm joined by 7 other commissioners who served with Mike Bloomberg at City Hall, who have experience in different aspects of government: transportation, city planning, sustainability. My area is media and technology. And we're identifying identifying global cities and working with mayors and their senior staff and advising on good government initiatives. The idea is we had some successes in New York City and had an innovative approach, and we want to work with mayors in global cities. Half the world's populations live in cities. That's going to escalate in the years to come. In many cases, federal governments, national governments have let us down, and so things are getting done at a very hyper-local level. So mayors need help, and so it's the vision of Bloomberg to empower these mayors to really influence change at a very local level and to try to inspire public-private partnerships connecting the private sector to local government to facilitate change. And so that's what we're up to.
Mayor, you would be the first call I think I would make.
And it's been interesting for us. We're not pretending because it worked in New York, it's going to work in Kansas City. But what we do is we want to share the lessons learned, what worked for us, but what didn't work. But what's been the best surprise is to go out to Los Angeles, and the Chief Innovation Officer for Los Angeles, Peter Marks, or Chief Technology Officer, his empire is expanding, is here today. And they're doing amazing things with open data and really trying to use technology effectively in local government with Mayor Garcetti. You know, it's been amazing to see the innovation in these other cities. My colleagues just got back from Rio, and Mayor Paez is really effectively using technology. After we created NYC Digital and appointed the first ever Chief Digital Officer in government, Paez took a page from that and hired his own. But it's amazing what Pedro is doing in Rio right now that really is running circles around what we did in New York a few years ago. And so it's inspiring to see how different cities are using technology and media to connect with constituents and really influence change.
I think it's also interesting to see how you have this intersection and collision almost between film and media and technology, and it just continues to flourish.
And, you know, millennials are very civic-minded. They want to really make a difference, and they want to take things into their own hands often. And it's inspiring to see how we can work with a younger generation to really influence change, whether they're telling stories or making films or creating new apps or businesses and making those connections. A lot of our work now is focused on empowering women and girls and looking at technology. I was recently with Lauren Greenfield, who directed, you know, this amazing campaign that we saw, Like a Girl, during the Super Bowl. And I think it's gotten something like 80 million views. I mean, it's like incredible. And there are other brands, you know, Verizon and Revlon have done amazing campaigns, you know, to really promote and to empower young girls. But if we are, you know, technology is a sector that's growing, it's changing our lives. It's changing the way all of us do business and live our lives. There aren't enough girls, there aren't enough minorities in technology, and we have to inspire them to enter this market and to give them opportunities and get excited about it.
Katherine, in our closing couple of minutes, I'd love to give you the opportunity to ask this crowd, this very fascinating crowd, how you could be working with them more closely with Bloomberg Associates.
Well, part of, you know, our media and technology practice, as I said, is, you know, we're trying to take, you know, the Made in New York campaign to other cities, and how do they localize it, and how do they create that sense of local spirit. And there's a lot of creativity in these cities, but they don't have the funds, they don't have the resources, and they don't have the expertise to get these campaigns off the ground. And what we want to do is really foster these public-private partnerships in these cities. So you're representing brands, you're representing advertising and media companies. We need your help, and it could be a very interesting way to help corporations be good local citizens and to really engage with their local government, with their local community, with young people. And so there are any number of points of engagement that we could foster, but we do need the creative spirit, and we do need that connection. I mean, and just to see, you know, Made in New York, Radical Media, you know, worked with us and, you know, and committed to the campaign, and we trademarked the logo for this city and, you know, and really have been very protective protective over the use of the mark, but it clearly struck a chord, and now you're seeing made in different iterations in different cities. And so I think that there are different variations of that creative campaign, but the spirit is to create a sense of community and to unite a community. So we need your help, and so if there's an appetite to work with local governments in key global cities, we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And Katherine has some colleagues here. I don't know if you want to point them out, because I know you have to leave.
Todd Asher,
you want to raise
Shana
your
Horowitz,
hand.
Lindsay Firestone. They're such a dream team. They worked with me at city government, and so it's such a great pleasure that the journey continues.
I think we are almost out of time, but I want to thank Katherine Oliver. What an inspiration. And, it's interesting when we think of storytelling as what has always kept communities together. And now we're seeing kind of storytelling 4.0 into this kind of new world that we're all inhabiting. I also want to thank Sergio and Rachel for this opportunity today. I am actually leaving for Kenya and Uganda tonight to visit UNHCR refugee camps. And so it feels really special to be in the UN this morning, but also I am going to take a lot of the information Katherine just shared to be able to document this journey and help refugees tell their stories, which needs to be told as well. So thank you all. Have a great day.